So question 5, this is actually something we just went over. If the secondary consumer died, so if these spiders died of natural causes, so the frog didn't eat it, spider just up and day died of old age. Question is what happens? What happens next? What happens to that dead body? Well, who eats dead bodies? Decomposers eat dead bodies. So it starts getting decomposed. Now, we don't know what's going to start decomposing it, but we know it'll be a decomposer, whether it's a big animal or bacteria, something really, really small. So that bacteria is going to eat. So that bacteria is getting energy from this spider. Well, that bacteria breaks down those compounds in the spider, and essentially it poops. And that mineral, or the minerals or the nutrients coming out of that poop, goes to the soil. And that soil refuels this flower. So I'm going to draw, I'm going to say this is a bacteria. So the B for bacteria. So the spider remains go to this bacteria. The bacteria poop. It makes its way, that poop that has nutrients and minerals, make its way into the soil. I'm going to put an S here to represent soil. And these flowers and these producers are going to get those nutrients. They're going to get those minerals as a fertilizer. That's why a lot of people will use like cow poop as a fertilizer, manure as a fertilizer, because it's chock full of nutrients. So that all of that answers question 5. Question number 6. Which of these can be food for decomposers? This one can be a tricky one. So the answer is all 4 of these. Flowers, butterflies, spiders, frogs. Anytime, any single organism, doesn't matter what trophic level it is, any organism, if it dies of natural causes or it dies of not being eaten by something else, decomposers can come in. Vultures don't care if they're eating a deer or if they're eating a cow or if they're eating a wolf. They don't care. It's dead. So decomposers act on any level of the trophic pyramid. The last question just asked, what are 3 different kinds of decomposers we might see in this ecosystem? One could be bacteria. You could think of mushrooms, think of worms. Vultures, not likely. They usually don't eat small things like frogs. Those are the big 3, but just any examples of decomposers could really work here. So I mentioned earlier that between food chains and trophic pyramids, they're kind of the same thing. But trophic pyramids kind of give us a little bit more information that we didn't have before, at least when looking at a food chain. A trophic pyramid, the way it's shaped this way, is it's actually shaped by the number of organisms. So down here, producers are the biggest wedge of this pyramid. It's also the largest. It's at the bottom and it's the largest. Primary consumers, a little bit smaller. Secondary, smaller. Tertiary, smaller. Quaternary, smaller. But I don't mean organism size. I mean the actual number of organisms. This is saying if I were to go out into a meadow, there might be 1 billion blades of grass, but only 1 million bees, and only 100,000 frogs, and only 10,000 snakes, and only 1,000 osprey. So the number of organisms is actually decreasing. And think about that. If you see a hawk on the side of the road or flying, that's kind of rare. It's really cool to see that. Or seeing a shark in the ocean, pretty rare event. But seeing other fish, you see those all the time. Seeing trees, you see those everywhere. Seeing insects, you see those everywhere. Why though? Why don't we have just as many snakes as we do grass? Why don't we have just as many osprey as we do insects? It has to deal with energy. So there is a rule of thumb that only 10% of the energy available, or the energy in a trophic level, is available to the next one. For instance, if these producers, let's say a single tree, let's say there's 100 calories worth of energy. Calories is a measure of energy. let's say there's 100 calories in that tree. Well, that's good. That's good for me. I want to eat those 100 calories. But this rule tells me that even if I ate that entire tree, I would actually only get about 10 calories. That's 10% of that 100. One reason, not all the material in an organism is consumed. For instance, this osprey is going to eat a snake. Snakes have bones in them. Osprey aren't going to eat those bones. Or thinking about an insect. This caterpillar is eating the leaves. Might eat the stem too, but it's not going to eat the roots. If it's on a tree, it's not going to eat the bark. Well, the bark has calories in it. I just didn't eat it. The bone has calories in it. I just didn't eat it. So that's one way that we're losing energy. Another way we're losing energy is that we eat things, but we don't really digest everything. This is going to be super disgusting, but super true. Corn kernels. On the outside of corn kernels, there's a layer. It's made of cellulose, which is just a plant material. Humans cannot break down cellulose. So, after you eat corn, you should take a look at your poop. Because sometimes you'll see whole corn kernels in it. Because maybe if you didn't chew it all the way, it didn't push out the rest of that corn. It's because our digestive system cannot break down that cellulose of the corn kernel. There's energy in that corn kernel. There's energy in that cellulose skin. Us as humans can't access it. There's a lot of other animals who can. But for us, we lost some of that energy. When you think about poop in general of any organism, they're pooping out things they can't digest. Well, that undigestible stuff has energy in it. So 10% of the energy is at one level, only available at the next. Now, not shown on here is the sun. The sun is giving out lots and lots of energy. Plants are only absorbing about 10% of it. So that 10% rule also deals with plants getting solar energy. The main reason for that disparity is because plants can work but so fast. They're undergoing photosynthesis, they take in more sun, undergoing photosynthesis, but there's more sun than photosynthesis can handle. So the 10% rule works in that direction too. Here I have two food chains, and this is looking at the human food chain, a simplified human food chain. Here we have corn, and on the left-hand side, and we're saying all humans are vegetarians and we eat corn. On the right-hand side, we're saying here's all the humans, but they're just meat eaters. So here we have this corn, we have this cattle eating this corn, and then we have humans. Let's take a quick second at this. Where do we see more humans? Do we see more humans on the vegetarian side, or do we see more humans on the meat eater side? Hopefully you noticed there's a lot more here on the vegetarian side. Again, think about that energy. We could say there's 100 calories in all of this corn, which means 10 calories available here. Same scenario here, 100 calories in corn, 10 go to the cattle, only 1 calorie left for humans. Humans in general could be fed so much more if we were all vegetarian, or at least didn't eat as much meat. The amount of corn that we have to feed beef, we could just feed that directly to humans. Because sure, those cows get larger, but they don't get but so much larger. They don't produce but so many more hamburgers, because a lot of that energy is lost. So this is a really good rule of thumb to know, that humans, as vegetarians, we can support more humans on Earth. Now, I'm not arguing us to all become vegetarians, but just thinking about typical energy transfer, that's kind of the rule of thumb. And as a follow-up, shorter food chains, so those with less rings, instead of going, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, quaternary, sextenary, 10 plus levels, you don't really see that in nature. It's very rare to see 5 or 6 levels. The main reason is that shorter food chains support more individuals than longer food chains. More people and more individuals can be fed if you're not all the way at the top. Because if you're all the way at the top, barely any energy is getting to you. So I'm going to give you guys a word problem. This is a typical word problem you could see on the review quiz, you could see on a test, even the lab quiz, because in lab we'll be covering this material as well. So here's the problem. Consider the above food chain. So the food chain is maize or corn, goes to the locust, goes to the lizard, goes to the snake. We could also redraw this so it was a trophic pyramid, but it's the same information. So it says consider the above food chain. If there are 3,200,000 incoming calories of sunlight, how much will the snake get? So consider that word problem, and given this food chain, I'm going to give you the opportunity to pause this video to work on this problem. So go ahead and pause now. Alright, welcome back. So hopefully you've worked through this problem and you got the right answer. So what I'm going to do, and where most people mess up, let me get my pen here, where most people mess up is that they give this 3 million calories to corn. But that's not what the problem said. The problem said you had 3 million calories of sunlight. So I'm going to draw the sun up here. So we have the sun. It is the sun that has this 3,200,000 calories. Now remember that 10% rule also applies sunlight to those producers. So that means this corn is getting 320,000 calories. If you didn't know, when doing 10%, really easy way to do 10%, you just get rid of that last digit. So this 3,200,000, if I got rid of that last zero, gave me 320,000. So do 10% to the locust, that's going to be 32,000 to the locust. If I go to the lizard, that's going to be 3,200 to the lizard. And then last but not least, our snake is going to have 320 calories. You really need to pay attention to the wording of the questions. Because I could have also said, consider the above food chain. If there are 3,200,000 calories in locusts, that would tell me, let me do a different color. So let's put this in blue. So let's imagine that this problem said, instead of sunlight, I said we had that many calories in locusts. And then I said, how much is in corn? I'm like, well, whoa, what do you mean what's in corn? So now you have to work backwards. So let me put it this way. So locusts, we have 3, 200, 100, 100, 100. Well, we know maize must have more than that, because locust only had 10%. So maize has even more than that. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a zero back to that. So I'm going to say maize has 32 million. So here I'm just giving you different possibilities of how you would see an energy transfer problem. Really, it's just reading the question carefully to figure out what calories that I give you, who has those calories. Once you determine who has those calories, doing the calculations are fairly easy. I can also show you a food chain like this and say, oh, what is the lizard? Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, etc. So all sorts of questions I could ask you about a food chain or a trophic pyramid.